You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 721 of the Dressage Radio Show, official podcast of the United States Dressage Federation on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. We've got a special show this week highlighting international competitors declared for the chance to compete at the Pan Am Games. First, we're speaking with Lori Bell from Canada, and then Reteguiz-Denizard, hoping to represent Puerto Rico. Louis will stick around for a trainer tip about halts.
This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing really well. The weather is beautiful. The days are long. I mean, this is heaven to me, you know? Yeah.
This is prime Phil season, everybody. He is not grumpy Phil. I love it. I love it when he's doing great and he's not grumpy Phil. Everybody who's listens to the show knows I make fun of Phil right around November. He becomes
when time
grumpy
change
Phil.
happens and it's cold and or wet and the days are so short, and I mean there's a lot of reasons to be grumpy.
I don't disagree. It's
and there's no horse shows up here, and it's a problem for a person that has to be outside.
Yes.
For
sure.
many hours of the day, and it's easier when the day, the sun is out and the weather is nice, and it just makes a real difference to me on a day-to-day basis. So
I know,
and
I love it when you're so happy and you're not grumpy Phil. It makes me so happy, and of course, that's why I, tease you a little bit, but not too much, because then he gets really grumpy. So I'm glad you're in such a good mood. It's been a stressful day for me because everybody. If you don't know, I am not a computer person. Like, I need everything to work. I get super anxious when there's computer problems. So shout out to my husband, Travis, who rescued my computer. Died this afternoon. Like, I was doing some computer work. It's been a little bit funny, and it just
isn't he a CEO of a tech company? That's what I think is the funniest part about Reese, is that she is tech challenged, but she's married to a guy who is the opposite of that, a tech expert. So anyways.
And it's kind of like, when I tease grumpy Phil, a lot of times my husband teases me about my lack of computer knowledge. Like, that's why I try to stay up on computer knowledge. But Phil and Paul on the show really, they do all of it. I don't do any computer stuff, but I have my computer, and it's very me. Like, I know exactly how to get on and do what I need to do. Well, it died, and everybody, it was almost Reese meltdown time. Like, my husband jumped right in because he knew I was there. I was right on the edge. I mean, I was about ready to get the shots down. I was so upset, and I was panicked, and Trav and Paul took care of it. So they got the MVP of the show because it was the situation. But my husband just he has extra computers. He described it. I don't really know how to use this thing, but it's fine. It's going well. We have actually had a pretty good computer night since then. And, but yeah, definitely meltdown city, but we're good. So I was sweating earlier, but we're good. We're back at it. And we've had a pretty good training week. I was able to actually go to Wyoming last week. We recorded a little bit early, and I was able to go visit a client in Wyoming at her farm there. Shout out to anybody in Wyoming. And I actually flew into Billings, Montana. So shout out, if you ever want me to come, let me know. I'll probably go out again next year. And it was really fun. What an amazing adventure. So I've not spent a lot of time out west, and just driving that drive is stunning. So it was really fun. I did have a moment, Phil, that I knew you would laugh at. I'm driving along, and the speed limit's 80. So of course I was not going 80. I was going significantly faster than that. I was just right around 90. So I'm cruising, and I'm driving, I'm looking at the scenery, and it's definitely big sky country. There's like one car, there's no cars anywhere. And I drive, and I'm like, chain changing station. I'm like, what is that? And it's where you have to put chains on your tires because of the snow.
The chain
and I had to laugh.
Yeah.
I forgot to text Phil and like, what is this? Yeah, I don't understand that type of weather, but yeah, I did see it, and what an amazing country, and it was really fun to go out there. So definitely a fun adventure for me, and all my horses were doing really well. It was a beautiful facility, so it was a lot of fun. So I was on a grand adventure last weekend, and my girls here at the farm kept things churning, and the horses, they did some hill work. I think they were actually happy to see me when I came back. They were like, oh. I told the girls, I was like, it is hill work time. And they did a great job with them. So it's nice to be back. And it was a fun adventure. So shout out to our listeners out in that area. It's beautiful country. Well, Phil, it's actually been about a week and a half since we recorded, because we recorded early last week and got back on our normal schedule. So I haven't talked to you in, let's say, 10 days. So we need a baby update. What's going on with our babies?
Phoebe and Gio. Well,
I'm like, this is our weekly update, guys. I love it. I want to know what's going on with our babies. Like, what's going on? We're going to need some pictures.
Well, the last time I said we were thinking about I was thinking about getting my friend on to get, so that's done. So
we have had a rider up. This is so exciting. See, we're in this, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, they're actually started with the rider last year.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I like to do it in the summer of their 2-year-old year. So that was like September. And I said, okay, I was, getting them used to the tack and whatever. And then I had this rider up last year, but now we're doing it seriously.
Now we're getting serious. Now it's serious.
So yeah, I mean, it's been nothing but successful. Gio is actually the calmer horse, which is normal. I think it's normal for gelding to be a little bit steadier, at least in the beginning, because I think the geldings, they don't even know what's going on, so they're kind of like, oh, okay, and then okay, and then my horse, Phoebe, is a filly, and she's a little more aware of what's happening, a little bit more suspicious of what this is going to lead to. Yeah, so she's smart. She's a girl. Let's be real. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Girl power. Yeah, girls are a little bit smarter, at least in the beginning. At this age, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, at this stage. So, but she's been also very good. The issue is you have to read the horses individually, right? Like if a horse is showing you the signs that they're not happy, and then you can't expect things to go smoothly, right? So if they're looking nervous or something like that, a big thing for me is like the mouth. The mouth tells the whole story of whether the horse what they're thinking, and of course like the ears and the tail and all of that. If you're not good at reading your horse, this is not a good idea to be starting them under saddle. So Phoebe's just on the slow track, which is fine with me. We've talked about that, and then Gio is a little bit more ahead of the game. So he's actually kind of walking around, letting the rider steer a little bit, which is great. And he's just kind of a chill dude. So that's pretty awesome. So for the next week, actually, we're going to a horse show. So the babies will be on the back burner for the next week. A little break. Yeah, a little baby break. Yeah. Yeah, they might get done on Monday or Tuesday, but we've got to ship out on Wednesday or Thursday. So that's just how it happens. You have to dedicate, a lot of time to each of them on each day. You can't just get like, oh, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to just back a horse, no. Yeah, clear the schedule. So if there is a problem, you got to be able to dedicate. Each horse has their own time and, work through whatever issues will pop up because so that's where we're at. I love it. It's my weekly update. So I love it. Thank you. And I have exciting news. I did sell my young horse that I had. So I'm actually on the hunt again looking for my next unicorn, which is really cool. My little guy got a great home and I'm really looking forward to it. It's kind of fun and I'll be heading to Europe in a couple weeks. So that's exciting news for me. So should be a fun adventure. So stay tuned. I'm going to Europe in 2 weeks too, so I'll meet you there.
we'll meet you there. Really, we didn't talk. We didn't talk this out, people, before we got on the show. So that'll be fun. Maybe Phil and I will meet up in the Netherlands. You never know where you'll see us. Well, fantastic. Well, we've got a great show for you, and we'll get started right after this break from Kentucky Performance Products.
Vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant that supports healthy muscle and nerve function by limiting cellular damage. Green grass is the best source of vitamin E for horses, but most horses don't spend enough time grazing to meet their needs. Hay, grain, and winter pasture provide little to no natural vitamin E. To ensure your horse's vitamin E requirements are met, choose Elevate. Elevate contains a readily available source of natural vitamin E. Elevate is cost-effective and easy to feed. To learn more about Elevate, visit the Kentucky Performance Products website at kppusa.com.
Well, tonight we are so happy to have Lori Bell. She's the owner of Horse Haven Farm, an international rider from Canada. Lori, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
I'm thrilled, and I'm really excited to learn more about you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a dressage rider, obviously. I have declared for the Pan Am Games. This is my second declaration. I started my riding career in jumpers, like all, I think, young kids do, and went to university and was, I think, 4 months into my first job out of university, and I had a horse, a 2-year-old. I'm very addicted to the whole process. So I bought a 2-year-old, and it happened to be an event at an eventing barn, and thought, well, that might be fun. And it then started taking some dressage lessons with a coach that went into the eventing barn, and realized I knew absolutely nothing. So by that time I was 26, and I started taking dressage lessons and never looked back. I realized how much I could learn and how much fun it actually is. I had no idea. And since then, I've been right solidly into dressage with probably until I was about 38, I was working full time and riding and showing 2 dressage horses. And then at the age of 28, I was fairly burned out in the corporate world and trying to figure out what I could do, and thought, well, I have a passion and a skill with horses, and I have a skill selling. So I branched into importing and training and selling horses. And that just progressed. That was, a few years ago. I'm not going to say how many. And then I, started my own business and went from there. So the one horse I'm currently competing that is declared for the Pan Am Games, I actually bought as a 3-year-old as a sales project, and then realized a couple of years after that horse was mine. So that's how that came about.
So his name is, his show name is Flirt, and he's pretty, yeah, he's pretty special. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about his breeding, because you bought him as a young horse?
Yes, he is bred to the eyeballs as far as dressage horses go. His father is Florencio, and his mother is a Donner Hall mare. He is full brother to Floriscount, who is currently a very popular Oldenburg stallion in Germany that everybody wants to breed to. So it's pretty cool that they're actually full brothers. Yeah, so I saw him as a 3-year-old, and since I was thinking of him as a resale project, I realized that he was probably going to be 17 hands, and that's not so easy to sell to the amateur market. And he was 3. He'd been under saddle a month, so it's not easy to sort of get a feel for them. And I thought, no, and I walked away. I'm not interested in this horse. And my husband, who goes with me on all the buying trips, has a very good eye, and he said, we need to go back and look at that horse. And I'm saying, no, he's too big, or he's going to be too big. He's only 3. He's so green. And he insisted. So I went back and bought him. So I really have to thank my husband for pushing that.
Or blame him.
Yeah. Yes, we're blaming him for all of that. I did still try to sell him. And anyway, for a couple of reasons, he didn't sell. And I'm sitting in the corner, practically in tears, thinking, I really don't want to sell this horse. And when he didn't sell, I thought the universe was telling me to keep him. And I'm so glad I did. So
isn't that funny?
Yeah, we went
Lori,
from there.
I think that happens. A lot of stories, and Phil and I are lucky we get to talk to a lot of riders, but sometimes it's like they don't sell for whatever reason, and you end up keeping them. I think you hear that story more often than not. Sometimes like there's a reason you're supposed to have this horse. And so I love that part of the story.
Yes. And that has actually happened to me before Flirt. I purchased an 8-year-old. It was going to be my horse. And he went to Pre-St. George and wasn't doing so well. And I thought, I'm going to sell this horse. And again, for the dumbest reason, he didn't sell. And he ended up being the first Grand Prix horse that I trained up myself. And I still have him, actually. He's 26 here at home, driving me crazy. But again, the universe said, you need to keep this horse. And it happens a lot. I really listen to, I really try to listen when it looks like I'm being told something. So yeah, it's a fun thing.
I think, as professionals, and you've run a very good importing business and are good at that. When you're sort of left with what you couldn't sell or what other people didn't want, right? So then you're quote unquote forced to ride what you've got or ride what's in your barn. So I mean you make an effort and you just do as good as you can, right? And then one day you're going down the center line in Grand Prix. Like that seems like a credit to your character and a credit to the partnerships that you've been able to form with these horses, and have not chosen them in the beginning specifically for yourself, but like I said, you just ride what you got.
Yes, and it's also a benefit of bringing these horses in because, I have a chance to ride them for a while and decide whether or not there's something interesting for me there. And if there isn't, there's always, pretty much always there's somebody out there that will love the horse. So it is kind of fun to be able to ride them and learn from them and then decide, do I keep it? Do I sell it? If I decide to sell it, doesn't mean it's a bad horse. It just means it's not.
They're not rejects.
I think that that's
most of the time people are selling their best horses or what they can because you can't afford to keep them all. I mean that's my perspective, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
yeah.
And Lori, I think that's a good point too because I think people get nervous when professionals sell horses, and sometimes it's just. They're not exactly, I just sold a wonderful young horse. He was a great horse, just not exactly my horse. And so for me to keep them personally, there has to be a spark of whatever nature. And so I think that's actually a great way to get horses because if professionals buy them, we buy them for a reason. And there's something we really like about them. And then maybe there's something just even personality. So I think that's actually a really good place to get horses is if professionals are selling them, it's not necessarily they're bad. It's just maybe not your size or your type or whatever.
Yeah. Or like Philip said, you can't keep them all. I mean, I've had horses. I look back and I think, oh, geez, I should have kept that one. But I couldn't afford it. You can only keep so many. So there's that too. I like to think that I bring decent horses that somebody is going to love, whether it's me or somebody else. Most, I would say probably 80 to 90%, probably closer to 90% of the horses that I import are still with the original owner. I'm very careful about placing them and making sure that it's a happy match, that's important to me. And I should someday look at it. I've imported over 70 horses in the last 20 years, and most of them, other than some went as hunters, and they flip them all the time. But the dressage horses, they pretty much keep them for life, which is really awesome in my mind. So,
I love that. I love it. So, Lori, tell us, kind of going back to the Pan Am Games, because that's coming up. It seems funny. I think because it's, it seems like normally it's a little earlier in the season, and Florida's really like people are qualifying, and it didn't quite seem like that this year. I haven't even heard much on the U.S. side either about the Pan Ams. I know it's coming up, so kind of let's bring people back of when are the Pan Am Games and what's happening right now in Canada as you guys are sort of qualifying.
Yeah, well, they are later than normal. They're in October in Santiago, Chile, which is that's their spring. I think the last Pan Ams were August. It sort of depends on where they are. But so that's the thing. Yeah, there was a few people out there showing and qualifying. The classes, the Pre-St. George classes in Florida were quite large. That's sort of normal for a Pan Am year. But I think because we had so much more time to, qualify, that it wasn't such a big rush push kind of thing. In Canada, we had the fortune, and it was fortunate for me because I did not get to show in Florida to get any scores, and you need minimum for Pre-St. George and for intermediate 1 scores to qualify. If you show anything more than that, you have a drop score, which is always pretty nice to have. But because I didn't show in Florida, fortunately, we had 4 CDIs here, which is also unusual. I can actually
a great job by the show organizers to get that together, because just hosting international competition is not easy, or
expensive.
And it's expensive.
And we normally don't have enough CDIs to qualify, which is why everyone has to go to Florida or Europe. But fortunately we did this year, and so we have 2 left. One in weekend after next, and then one at Bromont first weekend in September. And then after that, we'll be told who the team is.
So have they told you, is this Equine Canada, have they told you whether they're going to take 2 Pre-St. George horses and 2 Grand Prix horses like they have in the past, or, what will be the makeup of the team as far as...
They will decide that when they see all the scores and see how people have done. We have to take at least 1 Grand Prix horse in order to qualify for a berth at the Olympics. But then they'll start to look. So I now have an opportunity at 3 spots. So they'll start to look at the marks and say, okay, the Grand Prix horses get 1.5% added onto their score. But do we have a strong enough contingent of Grand Prix horses versus Pre-St. George horses? Who's more likely to get a gold or a silver as a team? Because that's what we need to get a berth at the Olympics next year.
Yeah, it gets a bit complicated, right? Because when you're trying to,
it is.
All they can do is sort of say, well, what's the likelihood? Because there's no guarantee. I mean, it's horses too. I mean, there's no guarantees that they'll get the scores, even if they've been, going pretty consistent at Pre-St. George and scoring 71, and there's no guarantees. So, but they're just trying to organize our best chance to qualify for the Olympics, because that's a real,
basically.
Yeah.
That's the real thing. Basically. So, and they're not currently some super strong Grand Prix horses. There's a couple. But there is some strong Pre-St. George horses. So who knows? I mean, the other thing is all the declared riders have an ongoing list of where everyone is in terms of scores and everything. So we all have a pretty good idea of where we stand. But there's also the top Grand Prix horse will go. After that, it becomes a matter of experience. They take all of our vet reports for the last 2 years, experience on a team.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors in judging. How we going to have. How are we going to have the best team?
I've been told
going.
I've never seen this in writing, but I've been told 60% is marks and 40% is all that other stuff.
Okay.
Lori, I think that's an interesting point because making a team is a different ballgame. Where I think that people have to understand that too, that your country has to look at the whole picture. And I think that's one thing that has to happen. It is on scores, but if a horse is, they don't feel like he can get through the jog or they get to Chile, and it becomes that's part of it when you are competing for your country. So I think that's a good thing to say.
Yeah. And the consistency, how consistent have they been with their marks? Do they have a 73 and then a 68, as opposed to being more consistent? That's another thing that's really important.
Absolutely. So will they send a Grand Prix horse as a designated competitor and then a reserve Grand Prix horse if, we have to have one? So will they send two? Or, how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, that's different every year, but they did not send a reserve to Tokyo because of financial concerns, and there has been no talk about a reserve for these games. But that's a smart idea. I mean, if the Grand Prix horse ends up not competing, then there's no Olympic berth.
Right. Right. So let's get into a little bit of a talk about the finances, because I think it was fairly shocking to me that there's going to be a shortfall to send a team to Chile this year. Can you talk a little bit about that? I heard because as a person, as a competitor, you went down to Florida. I mean, there's extreme personal costs, and then it seems like this was a last minute. Surprise, we don't have the money to send people to the Pan Am Games.
Yes. And it was a big surprise to me. And I have to say, quite angry at first. What it actually is a budget shortfall for dressage. EC honestly would have been nice to know a little earlier, because I think that they probably did know about this for quite some time. So it would have been nice to know a little earlier. But they are working hard to match that 60,000. EC has already gotten 25,000. Wendy Kristoff has her family foundation is offering to match 20,000. So we're really close. As it turns out, and as I understand it, they are sending a team. It would just be nice to have that money in hand before the games. They have until year end to match their budget, which is March. So it's not as horrifying as you at first thought. Once I started to understand. And EC has hired a consultant to teach them how to fundraise, which they need to. They know they need to do better. We know they need to do better, and so they're doing their part. We as dressage riders also need to do our part. The jumpers and eventers are already diving into various fundraisers. We know the young riders do fundraisers. Dressage has not really done much of anything. We've coasted a bit because, the para riders were doing well for a while, so we got some money from them. The jumper riders were doing well, we got some money from them. But that nobody's doing well right now, so we all have to work to fundraise, and it's just the way it is.
Well, it seems like it's been this way for a long time.
It has been, yes. Yeah. And who knows how long, really. Right. The general public doesn't know how long this has been going on, but it has been going on long enough that it needs to be addressed. And that's why I want to, work as a unit with EC. They're our national federation, and we need to be able to work together in a positive way to make some change and become better at fundraising from every angle.
Well, I mean, there is money available from the Canadian government, but they will only fund sports in which the country is successful at. They think that they,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so dressage. Sorry, since South Korea has not medaled at an Olympics, so that would be that's our only way to raise money from the government. So that's a bit of a catch-22 because you can't be successful without funding, and you can't get funding without being successful. So that they seem to. I don't think that's the way to go, but I mean they don't have enough to go around for everything. So unless it's hockey or figure skating or some of the Olympic the Winter Olympics sports, then we can't, you won't be funded in Canada. So I think that's a bit sad. And
it is. Now Sport Canada does we get funding from Sport Canada, but you're right, not nearly as much as we would get if we were more successful on an international basis. The budget for the Pan Am Games in total for all of the equestrian disciplines is $330,000, of which some is from Sport Canada, some is from Equestrian Canada, and then there's a shortfall that we have been talking about that we need to.
So Lori, we're happy to have you on tonight because you have started kind of a personal not personal as in for you specifically, but you started a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how did that come up? What was the idea, and where is that money going?
Well, we being the declared riders that were at the Paul Graves show got together one night, and it was more about talking about the future and how do we stop having these shortfalls, but the fact of the matter was that right now we have a shortfall that we need to do something about right away. And Tom Dvorak said he was going to do a clinic, and all the proceeds would go towards this shortfall. Tina and Jamie Irwin are doing a freestyle night, which I'm riding in, and a silent auction to raise some money. And I thought, well, what I thought was going to be a relatively simple, easy way, it was to do a GoFundMe page. It has not been easy. It's been a lot of work, especially when it incurred quite a lot of negativity from people, and I needed to, cool that down, or CEC wasn't going to support me at all with the fundraiser. But it seems to be working fairly well. I think so far we have about $4,200, which seems a drop in a bucket, but it's something. And I'm hoping that will. I'm kind of hoping we'll hit 5,000. I mean, the fundraisers right now set it. Did I change it? I think I changed it to 20 because that's what we need overall. But between myself, the Irwins, and Tom, and maybe other people are going to do a fundraiser. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything at this point. But hopefully between the three of us, we can at least match that 20,000 that Wendy Crystal.
Yeah, good for you, Lori. And I don't know what the negativity was about. That doesn't make any sense to me. But good.
Well,
I thought, and then I sent you a message, and I thought, I've got this platform that Reese and I have, and I'm going to use it to get the word out there, right?
Yeah. So, Lori, how can we help? Like, where is the GoFundMe page? How do we find the silent auction? Like, give us all some information of where we can go to help out with this. Again, we don't have negativity on this show. That's big for Philip and I, and we want to help. And we both understand, and I hope people listening to this program, like how difficult it is and how financially straining it is when you're competing internationally. Number one, it's incredibly expensive, and some people are lucky to have big sponsors that are able to fund it, and then a lot of people are not, and that's where it gets really, really difficult. I know because I've done it myself, how financially draining it is. So how can we help? How can we find all of the pages?
How can we get the best team to Chile, from Canada, moving forward, right? Being positive about it.
For sure. Well, right now you can find everything on my Facebook page. That's predominantly where I've been active with this. So if you went to my page, Lori Bell, you would find the links for the GoFundMe, for Tom Dvorak's clinic, and also for the freestyle fundraiser.
Fantastic. Can anybody send an email, or is there any way that people can get a hold of you that way?
Yes, they can send an email to Lori@horsehavenimports.com. If you go to my website, the email is there, of course, www.horsehavenimports.com. Yeah, and also I just wanted to mention, you mentioned how difficult it is for us to raise funds. This fundraiser is for the team. And on top of that, then many of us, myself included, have to fundraise for ourselves. So that's when we have to go back to the table and say, okay, thanks for this. But, if I make the team, I have to fundraise. I'm waiting till after I know, and then I'm going to start doing some fundraising. Maybe the last time I did a talk, I brought in a bunch of people, a vet, a farrier, a sports psychologist, and brought people together and a silent auction. I might do something like that again to give people value for their money, not just saying, give me money, but just that, this is for the team. This is to balance out EC's shortfall. We all still, most of us, have to fundraise on top of that. I do have a wonderful sponsor, Anna Dorisi. She gives me money every once in a while to help me with it, and it's very much appreciated, but it doesn't do what we need by any stretch. So
Sure. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, and we wish you all the best and all the fundraising, but also the riding as well.
Thank you.
If you have 1 or 2 horses, or you have 20, 30 or more, fly predators will make the difference between heavy infested fly problem or a no-fly zone. Balding Lab fly predators, catching these flies before they become an issue.
Well, tonight we have one of our favorite guests back, Lou Denizard. He is freshly back from the Dominican Republic and the Central American Games. Lou, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I always love doing your show.
Well, first of all, tell us about the Central American Games, what it is for people that don't know, and then we want to hear all about your horse and your journey.
Very good. Central American Games are regional games. They're kind of the smaller of the 3 games that happen in our area. So we have Central American Games, and there's several other groups of countries that have, like the Bolivian Games and the South American Games and so on. And all of those lead towards the Pan Am Games, which will be in Chile, Santiago, Chile this same year. And then that leads to qualifying for a spot or places in the Olympics, which will be Paris next year.
Fantastic. So, Lou, tell us about your horse.
Well, I have a horse that I've had for about 2 years. His name is H. Vortex. He's a Hanoverian branded horse, but he was a Swedish warm blood stallion, approved stallion for a bit. And then I guess they changed his career with that. And then I met him 2 years ago. And he was about 3rd level when I met him. And I put him through his paces to get to the small tour level. And I did a small tour at Central American Games with him.
Fantastic. So I'm assuming that the kind of the big one is going to the Pan Am Games here in a few months.
Yes. I have to do a little more qualifying to get myself there, but I think we can do it.
So tell us what that means, because I think we've actually had a show about talking about getting to the Pan Am Games. So we had a Canadian rider on. So tell us, how would you get to the Pan Am Games? Like, what happens now? Throughout season, if I had done the CDIs, which I didn't feel he was quite ready for the CDIs leading up to the Central American Games, which would have also qualified me for the Pan Am Games, I went CDN route, which are smaller shows that have 3 judges, and that qualified me for the Central American Games. Now, in order to go to the Pan Am Games, I have to do 2 CDIs, and according to the FEI,
we have something called a MER. It's a qualifying score, that a minimum qualifying score that the FEI will allow you, as whatever nation you represent, to go to the games. So ours is 64% at 2 CDIs will get us the approval to go to the Pan Am Games.
So, Lou, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask a stupid question. But what country do you represent?
I represent Puerto Rico because my parents were born there, and because Puerto Rico, it's a commonwealth, so therefore it has Olympic autonomy, so it can have its own representatives, even though everybody born in Puerto Rico is an American citizen.
Now, I did not know that. That's cool.
So interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's an American, I guess, protectorate, correct?
Yes.
And then, but it has its own representation in sport. That's
really cool.
Sport. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Lou. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's how it all happened.
Okay, so then you decided that there's was it a CDI held in Dominican Republic, or what was the level of that competition?
They considered that a CDI. I fell a little short of the 64% needed to get one of the scores there. So now I'm on the lookout for CDIs here on the East Coast. It looks like I'm going to end up trying to go to Bromont in Canada, and then Ocala at WEC for the 2 CDIs that they have. And I'll either achieve my MER or I won't. So
well, and you can visit Phil and come and visit me on your way back home.
Bromont. That's not even close to where I am. Yeah.
Well, it's Canada, Phil. Come on, work with
10
me.
Hours to get to Bromont. I mean, that's
work with me, Phil. It's Canada. It's Canada, Phil. Work with me.
But so you're gonna pick up your trailer and just head north, or how is that the logistics?
Well, I'll probably send him commercially. That's a little bit easier, and then I'll fly myself up there and meet him there. I think that's the best option, to get him to Bromont and then commercially send them back home and meet him back down here. So
yeah. I mean, it's quite a long journey. He's going to be well traveled by the end of this, isn't he?
Yes. Yep. And as Reese knows, all this trailering back and forth for that many hours is sometimes very wearing on riders and so on. So I'd rather send them commercially.
Yes, absolutely. Like it's and it's a long. I mean, from Kentucky to Florida is 1,000 miles. So it's a very long trip. So Luke, tell us, what are some challenges that you've had now, kind of bumping him to the small tour? What are some things that you're working on and that you'll make some adjustments after the games?
I think we've got all the pieces. There's things that need to be cleaned up a bit. I unfortunately have a horse that doesn't have the best presentation into the halt, both at the beginning and at the end of the test. So it's always the first and last impression. So I have to clean that up. I have to get myself in a much better scoring range there. And then he has a little bit of trouble in his pirouettes. If the pirouette is a little too small for him, he says, hey, you know what? That's a little bit difficult. So we'll continue to work on those. But the rest of the material in the test, I'm pretty confident that he's scoring well enough and that we're in the right ballpark.
Lou, I think you just gave everyone one of the best tips you could give them without giving. This isn't a trainer tip yet. We're going to get Lou for that. But that entrance halt, right? I mean, that's 20 points. I mean, that's a lot of points.
Sure.
Like you said.
To
and it's
gain or to miss, right? To gain or to miss, right? And
And it sets the tone a little bit for the judge, because if that's how you start, then they're already thinking, well, then where is this going to go? So you're kind of digging yourself out of a hole, and you if you prefer not to be in the hole.
I prefer not to be in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to dig themselves out? Like, it's not good to dig yourself out. Like, and if you happen to look up on the board and see, you're like, okay, now we're slugging. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yes. Lou, this is going to be a tricky schedule. Kind of what happens now? Like, when are these CDIs? Because the Pan Am Games are in October, right? So I'm assuming these are going to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, they are. They're in October. What's going to happen is that there really isn't any CDIs between when the horses landed. I mean, when the horses landed from the Dominican Republic, which was last Monday, they had to stay in a 7-day quarantine in Miami before they were released. So there were some CDIs that you just couldn't do. We couldn't land and immediately go to a CDI. So we're pretty much stuck with 2 CDIs that happen 3 weeks apart in September. And they have to be, the MERS have to be fulfilled before September 24th, because then that gives you time to submit the rider to the Pan Am Games, which is, in October.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a really tight schedule.
Yeah. But sometimes it happens like that. And I think that's what's interesting to look at as we're kind of talking about all the countries, right? It's a little bit later than normally. I think the Pan Ams are in August. So it is a little later cycle for everybody. So you do have a little bit more time for horses that were maybe younger for this year. But
this is all about the Tokyo Olympics being postponed. So basically, there's never a Central American Games in the same year as a Pan Am, but because Tokyo pushed everything forward, then the Centrals got pushed to the same year as Pan Ams. So that's kind of, that was the culprit.
The fallout from
interesting
back next
that
year.
we're still doing that. Yeah, that we're still doing that. That's very interesting. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is international sport becomes a whole different ballgame. And as you're trying to qualify for things, I mean, it's very much there's absolutely a strategy that comes into all of it, and having horses ready and all of those things. That's amazing.
Right.
Well, Lou, we wish you all the best of luck, right? I'm going to be cheering you on. We all here at the Horse Radio Network are going to be cheering you on your journey, and can't wait to see you go. If people want to follow you on your journey, how can they do that?
Usually, they can friend me on Facebook. I tend to do it on Facebook because so many of my friends are on there and they can follow along. And I love to bring them along on the journey rather than individually texting everybody and so on and so forth. So I enjoy that part, but they can follow there, or they can also use my website, DelanteDressage.com. That will sometimes have some of the stuff on there, so them to follow along.
Fantastic. Well, I follow along, and I love your journey, and I loved watching you through the whole entire process. So I can't wait to follow you on the rest of the summer. Thank you so much, Lou, and good luck.
Thank you.
As horse owners, we spend a lot of time on the road. Let US Rider help keep you covered. Our equestrian motor plan offers fast, reliable, nationwide service from our highly trained roadside assistance team. 24/7 coverage for both you and your horse. Membership includes horse trailer servicing, towing, flat tire repair, even on dual wheels, battery assistance, and lockout service on any vehicle in your plan. We also have your equine companions covered with referrals for emergency vet services, farrier referrals, and emergency stabling assistance. Get peace of mind on the road for you and your horse. Join US Rider today.
Well, for this week's trainer tip, we have Lou Denizard. He represents Puerto Rico, and we asked him to stay on because if you just listened to his last interview, he was saying how he needed to improve his halts. So we put him right on the spot. And Lou, we're glad you stayed on with us, and we want to hear, what are you doing to help your entry and exit halts?
Well, my horse tends to kind of bail on it a bit, and sometimes on the forehand, and sometimes just trots through it until he finally comes to the halt, especially in the small tour where you have to enter in the canter. So what I try to really work on is really changing the pace of my canter from forward to collected to forward again, then back to collected, and then collect him enough to bring him into a halt. And I think that the strength that it takes for them to be able to go forward and come back is really what he has to understand, so he can shift the weight onto his hind legs and do it gracefully, which is what we hope he will always do.
Yeah. Have it land like a snowflake, right? Not like a ton of bricks.
Exactly.
Land like a snowflake. But Lou, I think this is something that I think a lot of us work on, right? Especially my event horses specifically, because it's a small arena, and I mean by this time of the season they know they're going to halt a G, so it is difficult, right? And I think so a lot of people can do that. So I think like you said, changing the tempo, also sometimes just trotting up the center line and maybe doing a walk trot transition is another thing that we do.
Yeah, and I think I'm in Florida, so most of the places down here, if they have a covered or an outdoor ring, they only have the little tiny border. But if you're up in New England or up in other parts where you guys have indoor arenas, then you have walls, and you can also use a wall to help you tell the horse back off and wait. And so that's not something that I would be shy against. But I have no walls in Florida that help me do that.
I mean, again, you have to train.
I was just thinking about my own horses and that transition from third level to fourth level where they have to enter, in the canter and make that halt. And as I'm starting to think about fourth level, I'm already doing these, canter big to generate enough energy, and then you got to try to make that big canter small and light. Like Reese said, like on the spot.
Right.
And even if they're leaning against the wall, like I tend to do it in shoulder in before I try to do it, kind of straight and get all four legs lined up, because that can help the horse to think about taking more weight on his hind legs and and doing it right and then left and then right again, before I start just, doing dressage is progressive, right? We know that.
Correct. Yeah. I'm in total agreement with you.
Yeah, what's the best way to progress towards a nice straight halt to, at X? Well, I mean, it takes a lot of steps to get there, right? Yes. You got to start first, from the beginning. You got to start and walk. Can you generate shorter, quicker steps? Can you collect the horse in each of the gates before you start, doing in canter? Because it's hard. It's hard. And the horses want to get wiggly, and they want to get slow, and they want to. They want to just plow through your hand, like all those things. So, I mean, you gotta work at it, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. And then, you really, you can't let them, you can't want to stop them so strongly that they then back up, because then you open a whole nother can of worms. So it's always about trying to always feel like it's bringing it, as you said, like a snowflake landing into a forward feeling, so that I've always thought that halting is not a permanent state of being. It's in preparation to move on.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I always tell my students, like, don't grow roots at X, like
that's right.
Horse can't just learn that they stand at X, and they're on a break, right? Do the halts at all the letters. I mean, X is great because you have to do it in the test, but that doesn't mean in the daily training that you have to do it at a certain spot.
Perfect. Yep. Correct.
Yeah. And then also with the move off, I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with that as well, right? Like you said, don't grow roots, but a lot of people, it's a negative thing. So the next thing, you really need to trot off. And in the small tour specifically, you really, any time really, you need to kind of show the judges you're there. You're there to play. That's your ring.
Right.
And so I actually love it. One of my students goes 3, 2, 1, blast off. And I love it because it's a positive thing, and it's like, okay,
absolutely.
Let's go. And so that's one thing that I love, and that always makes me kind of chuckle. But I like that idea. I like that forward, like, come on, let's go. So you also have to practice that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, Lou, thank you so much for your time tonight. How can our listeners continue to follow you online? You do a great job, and we always love your tips.
Well, you're welcome to follow me on Facebook, Louis Reteguiz-Denizard, or to follow my website, which is delantedressage.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
It was great talking to you guys, as always.
Well, everybody, don't forget to send us email and Facebook shout-outs. We love them. Keep them coming. And I'm going to nudge Phil for some pictures of those babies to put on our Facebook page so you can follow along with their journey as well. You can find our show notes and links to today's guest on our page at horseradionetwork.com. Search Dressage Radio Show. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me is probably through Facebook, or my email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week for allowing us to put on a good show. That's Kentucky Performance Products. If you'd like to support our show and the Horse Radio Network, you can do that through the auditor program found at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we look forward to talking with you next week.